Senior developers can spot a junior in about 30 seconds of looking at their code. And no, it's not the syntax, it's not the formatting, but it's the habits of the engineer. There are certain things you're doing right now that are telling everyone around you that you're a junior developer. It's telling your tech lead, it's telling your code reviewers, it's telling, the people interviewing you that you're a junior developer. And the problem is nobody's going to tell you that. It just goes in their mind and they just automatically think it. So in this video, I'm going to expose the habits that are giving you away. Some of these are going to make you uncomfortable because you're probably doing them today, maybe even this morning. But here's the good news. Once you see them, you can fix them. And that's exactly what separates developers who stay stuck at junior forever from the ones who actually move up. So let's get into it. Quick side note. I've been rebuilding parts of my website recently, and I gotta tell you about the tool I've been using. It's called Hostinger Horizons. Basically, you describe what you want in plain English, and it builds it for you. No templates, no dragging boxes around. You just talk to it. I told it I needed a new web page for my brand. I told it about my brand colors and the overall feel, and I got a working version, no joke, within 10 minutes. Then I said I want to make the CTA button a different color and change a form to be a little bit more prominent, and it just did it. From there, I kind of just dove into creating newsletter pages and just kind of having fun with the overall tool. This is what I use vibe coding tools for, to build real items fast. Here's what I actually like about it. When you're done, you can publish straight to a real domain. No weird subdomains, no extra steps. It's all handled through Hostinger. And they have integrations to Supabase for authentication in databases while having a Stripe integration for payment. And if you want to take the code with you, they let you do it. The code at the end of the day is yours. If you want to try it, I've got a link in the description. You can start building for free and see if it clicks for you. Habit number 1, which is now very prevalent in 2025 and 2026, you copy AI code without understanding it. I'm going to start with, I've been 100% guilty of this. I literally just redid my entire website and I just let it rip, man. I just had it generating code like crazy and I was not reviewing everything. But that is a static site. I have recently added just a little bit of business logic in the back end to be able to save certain information, but overall, it's a static site. And by static site, I mean there's nothing dynamic happening behind the scenes, like not really a database, nothing like that. I have a newsletter, but the newsletters are all saved with MDX files, so they're not even saved to a database. However, when you're a junior engineer or you're working on the actual application that has business logic, it has everything you need, using AI and just copying and pasting it and not understanding every single line of code that you're putting in your application puts your application at risk. Why? Because it can be your data models, it can be the business logic. AI won't know all the edge cases to your application. It might know a general sense of what's going on and it looks really good up front, but it can hallucinate. And let me tell you, when it hallucinates, and it hallucinates very, very confidently, it can really mess up your system. So one thing I would say is definitely use AI. Like this is definitely not a, don't use, OpenAI or Cloud Code or anything like that. Use it. It's becoming an industry standard and everyone's using it. However, use it to help facilitate what you would be already typing. If you are typing it yourself, you're probably slowing yourself down a little bit, right? Use AI to help create what you have in your mind using your code. So you definitely want to create like a Claude MD file and have your agents all correctly structured, but you want to make sure that it's using what is in your brain and you're not replacing your thinking with AI. Because if you're replacing your thinking with AI, you're no longer needed. You want to make sure that you are very focused on the system design, so the overall architecture, and then the coding architecture that sits inside. And then once you're inside that coding architecture and now you're adding code into it, that's the perfect use case to using some kind of coding agent to help you really create a very well-wrote, function, class, feature that you know how to prioritize, understand, and debug if issues come up. And this kind of relates back to the whole theory that software engineers were never hired to write code. The main role is to solve business problems using technology. And writing code is definitely a big part of that because that's how we create software right now. However, there's so much more that goes into it than knowing how to code. And when you're trying to break into the field, a lot of it does go into trying to learn how to code, right? Because that's the thing you see on the screen. That's what you see. That's what make people make videos and tutorials and courses and all that on. And that is really important. You do need to know how to code, but there's a whole different world underneath. Like if coding is like the ocean and you go under the ocean and there's like all this other stuff, like there's sharks and whales and boats and treasure chests. That's how back-end engineering is. It incorporates so much, and coding is only one part of it. So make sure you're diving a little bit deeper and learning all the other things that AI isn't 100% sure on. Now, habit number 2 is you're afraid to ask questions. I have 100% again ran into this issue. I once was working on a .NET project. It was using whatever it was before Optimizely, Episerver, I think is what it's called, for C#. And that is a CMS application, and we needed to change something inside of it because it's pre-built with a lot of features, and I needed to change how the user is saved to the database, and they have a preferred route, and then you can override methods and functionality to change how you want it to be changed. I didn't know what I was doing, guys. I remember getting that ticket, thinking I knew what I was doing. And after like a week or two, my manager actually called me aside and said, I need to explain why my velocity is so low this week. And I told him I was stuck and, I'm trying to work on this and I didn't want to ask any questions because I didn't want to bother anybody. And he looked at me so disappointed. I was like, we are a team. We are all here to help each other grow, for one, grow within our craft and complete the project. Slowing down the team for yourself actually impacts the entire team. And that's when it really started to click. So what I think everyone should do, especially if you're a junior developer and you're on a team with like people maybe with more experience and you get a ticket and you're not 100% sure, time box it. Maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour. I think an hour is usually a good standard. If you can't figure out or don't know where to start after an hour, reach out for help. It doesn't bother the senior engineers or the good engineers on the team if you're being honest and you time boxed it and you tried it and you have contacts, right? Like you're coming in with a whole package of I tried to create X or I tried to implement Y and I just can't figure it out. Can you help me how to do this? And I'm 9 out of 10 times, I'm sure they're absolutely thrilled that you came to them for them to help you. You're going to be able to learn something significantly faster. And I'm also going to say, even if you're not on a team and you're trying to learn how to be a junior engineer, there's so many people. So there's AI, of course, that you can ask questions to, but there's so many people on like LinkedIn and Reddit and Stack Overflow is kind of dead right now. So I don't know if that's a great spot, but there's actually really good spots where you can reach out to people and they're not going to treat you like a piece of garbage and are willing to actually help you. Like I've gotten DMs all the time in my LinkedIn asking me, how do I start coding? How do I get this done? How do I do that? And I'm always replying to them, or at least trying to find a way for me to find time to reply to them. And I know there's so many other people within my tight community on especially LinkedIn that is always willing to help people. So definitely break out of your comfort zone and ask questions if you're feeling stuck and you need to reach out for help. Now, number 3 is that you ignore obvious clues. And guys, when I say ignoring obvious clues, this means so much. Because I was there too. It starts with like error messages. Error messages is such a great example of this. I mean, now we can hypothetically like grab it and kind of like stick it in AI and AI will kind of give us a lot of information on that. But even with AI doing that, AI can lead you down the wrong path. A lot of times I've noticed that if I stick like a whole bunch of errors, I'm sitting over like 1,000-line error message because it's crazy sometimes in your console. You stick it in AI, it sometimes gets context overload or doesn't really know how to help you. It might lead you in the wrong direction, try and install random, dependencies into your project when that's not needed. When really all you had to do was scroll all the way up to the top, read the first 2 lines and it says, here's the error. It literally tells you 80% of the time exactly what line and where in the line the error is. So I really recommend going outside the comfort zone and really trying to read the error messages that might be popping up. Now, on top of that, there's a lot of other areas to be able to get a lot of information where if you get the information, we're still usually ignoring it. And a lot of that falls into logs. A lot of it falls into observability, like using like open telemetry and adding all these analytics and error issues and logs and everything sitting right there in a beautiful package for when your application goes down. And then we just don't even read it. We just ignore it. And then we go back to our computer. And the first thing we do is, try and set up all the environmental variables on a local machine, start running the application, try and duplicate the bug, and then start debugging. Instead of just looking at the logs and the open telemetry and all of that kind of data to find exactly where the issue might be. So definitely make sure you're not ignoring the obvious signs and you're diving into the code and you're diving into what people are putting in place to find the error as quickly as possible. Now, number 4 is that you are optimizing before there's a problem. So there's a famous quote, and I'm not sure who makes it, but it's make it work first, make it right second, make it fast third. Again, that's make it work first. So if you're given a new ticket, or even if it's like a coding, programming thing for interviews like Elite Code, you're always going to want to make it work first. And that comes with interviewing, that comes when you're building new features, that comes when you're creating new projects. The main thing you do is make it work first. Who cares about performance? Who cares if you think it's ugly? Who cares about maintainability? Get the thing working and then make it right. Where some people say make it pretty. That's when you can kind of now refactor it. You got it working how you want it. Now you can be like, hey, this function, I might be able to fix here a little bit. Or, I made these variable names, they're hard to understand. It's hard to read. That is the time. The second step is the cleanup stage, more or less, when you're able to make it right. Right? You're going from making it work to now making it right. And the third step of making it fast is only needed if performance is slacking. So if you have like an SLA trying to make sure that the performance matches, that's when you're going to refactor and start adding maybe extra, data structures and algorithms if you're needing to save more memory and optimize speed that way. But a lot of times you can just do the first two, which is make it work and then make it right. And there's another thing with over engineering, and that's just optimizing everything extremely too early. There's a quote that is premature optimization is the root of all evil. This is by Donald Knuth. And he said this for a reason. And this is really true. When you're trying to over engineer or add premature optimizations, you're spending time creating a solution to a problem that doesn't yet exist. And on paper, it sounds like a good thing, right? It sounds like you're doing the right thing. I am creating a modern, readable, scalable application, and I am engineering certain components. I'm adding abstraction here. I'm using the dry principle here. I'm doing things that make the application feel legit. And that's a huge, huge potential problem to be stepping into. Make it work. Make it right, optimize for performance. And pre-optimization is none of those. That's a tier above. You're going to want to make it work, which means probably no abstractions, no dry principles, none of the things that you learn. You're just going to want to keep it simple, stupid. Then make it right. That's still probably not adding abstraction and dry. I believe in dry being after 3 times you're seeing the exact same knowledge, not the same coding, the same knowledge. And then you're like, this piece of knowledge can now be centralized in some type of abstraction. But that is you don't want to optimize for something that doesn't yet exist because you're solving a problem that does not exist. Now, the habit number 5 is you reinvent the wheel. The first question you should be asking yourself when you run into a problem is, does a library or framework fix this problem already? Is the problem I'm running into a solved problem? A lot of the times it is. Some of the solved problems that would require massive amounts of work is authentication and authorization. You can create your own authentication platform with authorization and create your own, hashing for the passwords, be able to refresh the JWT tokens if you even want to use a JWT token. There's a bunch of different things that you could create from scratch. But why would you do that when SaaS products like Clerk exist? Supabase exists. Better Auth, which is an open source authentication that you can add into your application, exists. You don't need to rewrite these major issues or major problems from scratch. You want to use libraries. Now, you don't want to overdo it, right? You don't want to use libraries and frameworks that, aren't maintained or, might have security risks and things like that. But a lot of the everyday problems that people run into in creating software, there are maintained libraries that will do that problem. So I like to think of it as don't reinvent the wheel, but I like to think of it as you as software is not just writing everything from scratch. A lot of what software is connecting all these libraries and frameworks together to create the product that you want to create. And that's a reason why some people are actually saying software development is getting easier over the years. And it's not even because of AI. This was getting talked about before AI even happened because of all these libraries that can do a lot of the really complicated things that we relied on developers having to write from scratch just 20 years ago. But now we are able to use these libraries and open source code, which is completely free to integrate into your project. A simple example might be like Fast API or Spring Boot if you're in the Java world, where these are frameworks that allow you to be able to create RESTful endpoints or, web applications online. And it comes with a lot of stuff rooted inside these packages. And you used to have to write all of that by yourself. And there's also libraries and everything that are more like smaller frameworks that you can integrate into your project as well. Now, there are some reasons to not use libraries and, specific and certain frameworks inside your application. And one of them might be that the library's massive complexity for what you're needing this project to do. If you're writing a simple scripting application, you might not need an entire web Python framework. You might just need a more lightweight scripting library that you can implement into your project. If it's for learning and you want to learn how to create that library yourself, go ahead. No one's going to stop you. Build what you find interesting. But I would put like a big asterisk next to it is to use the open source maintained library over what you write yourself, because a lot of the bugs that you might run into, the library might already fix, and it might come with some more features. But the biggest thing is just chase your curiosity, right? Learn what you find interesting. And if you find what you find interesting and you're able to really double down on it, and it's super intriguing and people love what you're doing or you yourself love what you're learning, that's all that matters. The biggest thing I would say here is to make sure that you're just going in the right direction. In this video right here, I talk about how I wasted 12 months learning how to code, and I don't want you to fall into the same trap. So if you're interested, feel free to watch that video, and I'll see you in the next one.